All right, we are live, and what are we talking about today? I picked up this book. We talked about this last time, War of Art. It's a pretty good book. I was just at this coffee shop, just grabbing coffee. I saw this book lying over there. I'm like, okay, I have to wait a couple of minutes. Let me pick this up. And I loved it. The moment I started reading this, it's like, it's really well written. It's really well written. You know that this guy knows how to write. Stephen Pressfield knows how to write in a really engaging way, and it just flows. Every sentence makes you trickle down. Every sentence is the right hit that you need to keep going, keep flowing. So I really like it. And maybe let's read this. It's pretty good. All right. The War of Art. What do I do? So we'll just read this book. I like it. I just want to do this today. I get up, take a shower, have breakfast, I read the paper, brush my teeth. If I have phone calls to make, I make them. I've got my coffee now. I put on my lucky work boots and stitch up the lucky laces that my niece Meredith gave me. I head back to my office, crank up the computer. My lucky hooded sweatshirt is draped over the chair with a lucky charm I got from a gypsy in Saint Mare de la Mer for only $8 in francs, and my lucky Largo name tag that came from a dream I once had. I put it on. On my thesaurus is my lucky cannon that my friend Bob gave me from Morro Castle, Cuba. Do we need to read this? Okay. When I start making typos, I know I'm getting tired. That's 4 hours or so. I've hit the point of diminishing returns. I wrap for the day, copy whatever I've done to disk, and stash the disk in the glove compartment of my truck in case there's a fire and have to run for it. I power down. It's 3:30. The office is closed. How many pages have I produced? I don't care. Are they any good? I don't even think about it. All that matters is that I have put in my time and hit it with all I have got. All that counts is that for this day, for this session, I have overcome resistance. Pretty good, pretty good. Hey, too many things to him. Morning routine is complicated, but hey, he got over the resistance. That's all you need. On my thesaurus is my lucky cannon that my friend Bob or Sandy gave me from Morro Castle, Cuba. I pointed toward my chair so it can fire inspiration into me. Okay? I say my prayer, which is the invocation of the muse from Homer's Odyssey, translation by D.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, which my dear mate Paul Rink gave me, and which sits near my shelf with the clunk cufflinks that belong to my father and my lucky acorn from the battlefield at Thermopylae. It's about 10:30 now. Hmm. So he starts work at 10:30, 11, 12, 1, 2. He works for about 4 hours. He writes for about 4 hours. And then he's done for the day. When I start making typos, I know I'm getting tired. That's 4 hours or so. I've hit the point of diminishing returns. I wrap for the day, copy whatever I've done to disk, and stash the disk in glove compartment. That's really cool. Yeah, I try to make my morning routine really simple because I just want to get over here and get started. So I just do brush, shower, and protein. That's it. That's my protein. That's my morning routine. I try to compress everything in like 20 minutes, but okay. What I know, there's a secret that real writers know that wannabe writers don't. And the secret is this: it's not the writing part that's hard. What's hard is sitting down to write. What keeps us from sitting down is resistance. The unlived life. Most of us have two lives: the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two stands resistance. Have you ever brought home a treadmill and let it gather dust in the attic? Ever quit a diet, a course of yoga, meditation practice? Have you ever bailed out on a call to embark upon a spiritual practice? Dedicate yourself to a humanitarian calling. Commit your life to the service of others. Have you ever wanted to be a mother, a doctor, an advocate for the weak and helpless, to run for office, crusade for the planet, campaign for world peace? or to preserve the environment. Late at night, have you experienced a vision of the person you might become, the work you could accomplish, the realized being you were meant to be? Are you a writer who doesn't write, a painter who doesn't paint, an entrepreneur who never starts a venture? Yeah, it's really good. Like, have you ever wanted to be a mother, a doctor, an advocate for? Yeah, it's so good that I keep. Like, I mean, this is so relevant. Like, once you start working, once you start focusing on your thing, you will keep hitting resistance, and it's really good that once you find, like, once that I found this thing which really got me out of resistance, the moment I don't even know if that was resistance, but I was just reading this book and I felt like, okay, I gotta finish this book, go back and do the work. So I came back, I did the work. So every time I feel like I'm hitting resistance in my mind, I want to recalibrate. I want to read this book again. Late at night, have you experienced a vision of the person you might become, the work you could accomplish, the realized being you were meant to be? Are you a writer who doesn't write, a painter who doesn't paint, an entrepreneur who never starts a venture? Then you know what resistance is. One night I was laying down. I heard Papa talking to Mama. I heard Papa say to let that boy boogie woogie because it's in him and it's got to come out. Okay, I don't know what that means. Resistance is the most toxic force on the planet. It is the root of more unhappiness than poverty, disease, and erectile dysfunction. To yield to resistance deforms our spirit. It stunts us and makes us less than we are and were born to be. If you believe in God, and I do, you must declare resistance evil, for it prevents us from achieving the life God intended when He endowed each of us with our own unique genius. Genius is a Latin word. The Romans used it to denote an inner spirit, holy and inviolable, inviolable, which watches over us, guiding us to our calling. A writer writes with his genius, an artist paints with hers. Everyone who creates operates from this sacramental center. It is our soul's seat, the vessel that holds our being in potential. Our star's beacon and Polaris. Every sun casts a shadow, and genius's shadow is resistance. As powerful as is our soul's call to realization, so potent are the forces of resistance arrayed against it. Resistance is faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, harder to kick than crack cocaine. We are not alone if we have been mowed down by resistance. Millions of good men and women have bitten the dust before us. And here's the biggest bitch. We don't even know what hit us. I never did. From age 24 to 32, resistance kicked my ass from east coast to west and back again 13 times, and I never even knew it existed. I looked everywhere for the enemy and failed to see it right in front of my face. Have you heard the story? Woman learns she has cancer, 6 months to live. Within days, she quits her job, resumes the dream of writing Tex Mex songs she gave up to raise a family, or starts studying classical Greek, or moves to the inner city and devotes herself to tending babies with AIDS. Women's friends think she's crazy. She herself has never been happier. There's a postscript. Women's cancer goes into remission. Is that what it takes? Do we have to stare death in the face to make us stand up and confront resistance? Does resistance have to cripple and disfigure our lives before we wake up into its existence? How many of us have become drunks and drug addicts, developed tumors and neurosis, succumbed to painkillers, gossip, and compulsive cell phone use simply because we don't do that thing that our hearts, our inner genius, is calling us to? Resistance defeats us. If tomorrow morning, by some stroke of magic, every dazed and benighted soul woke up with the power to take the first step toward pursuing his or her dreams, every shrink in the directory would be out of business. Prisons would stand empty. The alcohol and tobacco industries would collapse, along with the junk food, cosmetic surgery, and infotainment businesses. Not to mention pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, and the medical profession from top to bottom. Domestic abuse would become extinct, as would addiction, obesity, migraine headaches, road rage, and dandruff. Look in your own heart. Unless I'm crazy right now, a still small voice is piping up, telling you, as it has 10,000 times, the calling that is yours and yours alone. You know it, no one has to tell you. And unless I am crazy, you are no closer to taking action on it than you were yesterday or will be tomorrow. You think resistance isn't real? Resistance will bury you. Bury you. You know, Hitler wanted to be an artist. At 18, he took his inheritance, 700 kronen, and moved to Vienna to live and study. He applied to the Academy of Fine Arts and later to the School of Architecture. Ever see one of his paintings? Neither have I. Resistance beat him. Call it overstatement, but I'll say it anyway. It was easier for Hitler to start World War II than it was for him to face a blank square of canvas. Book 1. It's pretty cool how he says, instead of chapter 1, he says book 1. Book 1, Resistance, Defining the Enemy. The enemy is a very good teacher, the Dalai Lama. The following is a list in no particular order of those activities that most commonly elicit resistance. The pursuit of any calling in writing, painting, music, film, dance, or any creative art, however marginal or unconventional. The launching of any entrepreneurial venture or enterprise for profit or otherwise. Most commonly elicit resistance. The pursuit of any calling in writing, painting, music, film, dance, or any creative art, however marginal or unconventional. The launching of any entrepreneurial venture or enterprise for profit or otherwise. Any diet or health regime. Any program of spiritual advancement. Any activity whose aim is tighter abdominals. Any course or program designed to overcome an unwholesome habit or addiction. Education of every kind. Any act of political, moral, or ethical courage, including the decision to change for the better some unworthy pattern of thought or conduct in ourselves. The undertaking of an enterprise or endeavor whose aim is to help others. Any act that entails commitment of the heart, the decision to get married, to have a child, to weather a rocky patch in a relationship. The taking of any principled stand in the face of adversity. In other words, any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity, or expressed another way, any way that derives from our higher nature instead of our lower. Any of these will elicit resistance. Resistance is invisible. Resistance cannot be seen, touched, heard, or smelled, but it can be felt. We experience it as an energy field radiating from a work in potential. It's a repelling force. It's negative. Its aim is to shove us away, distract us, prevent us from doing our work. It's a repelling force. It's negative. Its aim is to shove us away, distract us, prevent us from doing our work. Resistance is internal, seems to come from outside ourselves. We locate it in spouses, jobs, bosses, kids, peripheral opponents, as Pat Riley used to say when he coached the Los Angeles Lakers. Resistance is not a peripheral opponent. Resistance arises from within. It is self-generated and self-perpetuated. Resistance is the enemy within. Resistance is insidious. It will tell you anything to keep you from doing your work. It will perjure, fabricate, falsify, seduce, bully, cajole. Resistance is protein. I don't understand what does he mean by resistance is protein. It will assume any form if that's what it takes to deceive you. It will reason with you like a lawyer or jam a 9mm in your face like a stick-up man. Resistance has no conscience. It will pledge anything to get a deal, then double cross you as soon as your back is turned. If you take resistance at its word, you deserve everything you get. Resistance is always lying and always full of shit. It's implacable. Resistance is like the alien or the Terminator or the shark in Jaws. It cannot be reasoned with. It understands nothing but power. It is an engine of destruction programmed from the factory with one object only to prevent us from doing our work. Resistance is implacable, intractable, indefi- indefatigable. Reduce it to a single cell, and that cell will continue to attack. This is resistance's nature. It's all it knows. Resistance is impersonal. It's not out to get you personally. It doesn't know who you are and doesn't care. Resistance is a force of nature. It acts objectively. Though it feels malevolent, resistance in fact operates with the indifference of rain and transits the heavens by the same laws as the stars. When we marshal our forces to combat resistance, we must remember this. Resistance is infallible. Like a magnetized needle floating on a surface of oil, resistance will unfailingly point to true north, meaning that calling or action it most wants to stop us from doing. We can use this, we can use it as a compass. We can navigate by resistance, letting it guide us to that calling or action that we must follow before all others. Rule of thumb: the more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel towards pursuing it. Resistance is universal. We are wrong if we think we are the only ones struggling with resistance. Everyone has a body. Everyone who has a body experiences resistance. It never sleeps. Henry Fonda was still throwing up before each stage performance, even when he was 75. In other words, fear doesn't go away. The warrior and the artist live by the same code of necessity, which dictates that the battle must be fought anew every day. Lives by the same code of necessity, which dictates that the battle must be fought anew every day. This is so cool. It never goes away. This is so true. It never goes away. Resistance plays for keeps. Resistance's goal is not to wound or disable. Resistance aims to kill. Its target is the epicenter of our being, our genius, our soul, the unique and priceless gift we were put on earth to give and that no one else has but us. Resistance means business. When we fight it, we are in a war to the death. We are in a war to the death. Resistance is fueled by fear. Resistance has no strength of its own. Every ounce of juice it possesses comes from us. We feed it with power by our fear of it. Master that fear and we conquer resistance. Resistance only opposes in one direction. Resistance obstructs movement only from a lower sphere to a higher. It kicks in when we seek to pursue a calling in the arts, launch an innovative enterprise, or evolve to a higher station morally, ethically, or spiritually. So if you're in Calcutta working with the Mother Teresa Foundation, you're thinking of bolting to launch a career in telemarketing, relax. Resistance will give you a free pass. Obstructs movement only from a lower sphere to a higher. Resistance is most powerful at the finish line. Odysseus almost got home years before his actual homecoming. Ithaca was in sight, close enough that the sailors could see the smoke of their families' fires on shore. Odysseus was so certain he was safe, he actually lay down for a snooze. It was then that his men, believing there was gold in an ox hide sack among their commander's possessions, snatched this prize and cut it open. The bag contained the adverse winds which King Aeolus had bottled up for Odysseus, when the wanderer had touched earlier at his blessed isle. The winds burst forth now in one mad blow, driving Odysseus's ships back across every league of ocean they had with such difficulty traversed, making him endure further trials and sufferings before, at last and alone, he reached home for good. The danger is greatest when the finish line is in sight. At this point, resistance knows we're about to beat it. It hits the panic button. It marshals one last assault and slams us with everything it's got. The professional must be alert for this counterattack. Be wary at the end. Don't open that bag of wind. Resistance recruits allies. Resistance by definition is self-sabotage, but there's a peril that must also be guarded against: sabotage by others. When a writer begins to overcome her resistance, in other words, when she actually starts to write, she may find that those close to her begin acting strange. They may become moody or sullen. They may get sick. They may accuse the awakening writer of changing, of not being the person she was. The closer these people are to the awakening writer, the more bizarrely they will act, and the more emotion they will put behind their actions. They are trying to sabotage her. The reason is that they are struggling, consciously or unconsciously, against their own resistance. The awakening writer's success becomes a reproach to them. If she can beat these demons, why can't they? Often, couples or close friends, even entire families, will enter into tacit compacts whereby each individual pledges unconsciously to remain mired in the same slough in which she and all her cronies have become so comfortable. The highest treason a crab can commit is to make a leap for the rim of the bucket. The awakening artist must be ruthless, not only with herself but with others. Once you make your break, you can't turn around for your buddy who catches his trouser leg on the barbed wire. The best thing you can do for that friend, and he will tell you this himself if he really is your friend, is to get over the wall and keep motivating. The best and only thing that one artist can do for another is to serve as an example and an inspiration. Now let's consider the next aspect of resistance: symptoms. Procrastination. Procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it's the easiest to rationalize. We don't tell ourselves, I'm never going to write my symphony. Instead, we say, I'm going to write my symphony. I'm just going to start tomorrow. Part 2. The most pernicious aspect of procrastination is that it can become a habit. We don't just put off our lives today, we put them off till our deathbed. Never forget, this very moment we can change our lives. There never was a moment, and never will be, when we are without the power to alter our destiny. This second we can turn the tables on resistance. This second we can sit down and do our work. Resistance in sex. Sometimes resistance takes the form of sex or an obsessive preoccupation with sex. Why sex? Because it provides immediate and powerful gratification. When someone sleeps with us, we feel validated and approved of, even loved. Resistance gets a big kick out of that. It knows it has distracted us with a cheap, easy fix, kept us from doing our work. Of course, not all of it is a manifestation of resistance. In my experience, you can tell by the measure of hollowness you feel afterward. The more empty you feel, the more certain you can be that your true motivation was not love or even lust, but resistance. It goes without saying that this principle applies to drugs, shopping, masturbation, TV, gossip, alcohol, and the consumption of all products containing fat, sugar, salt, or chocolate. Resistance and trouble. We get ourselves in trouble because it's a cheap way to get attention. Trouble is a form of fame. It's easier to get busted in the bedroom with the faculty chairman's wife than it is to finish that dissertation on the metaphysics of Motley in the novellas of Joseph Conrad. Ill health is a form of trouble, as are alcoholism and drug addiction, proneness to accidents, all neurosis, including compulsive screwing up, and such seemingly benign foibles, foibles, wow, foibles as jealousy, chronic lateness, and the blasting of rap music at 110 decibel from your smoked glass 95 Supra. Anything that draws attention to ourselves through pain free or artificial means is a manifestation of resistance. Cruelty to others is a form of resistance, as is the willing endurance of cruelty from others. The working artist will not tolerate trouble in her life because she knows trouble prevents her from doing her work. The working artist banishes from her world all sources of trouble. She harnesses the urge for trouble and transforms it in her work. Resistance and self dramatization. Creating soap opera in our lives is a symptom of resistance. Why put in years of work designing a new software interface when you can get just as much attention by bringing home a boyfriend with a prison record? Sometimes entire families participate unconsciously in a culture of self dramatization. The kids fuel the tanks, the grown ups arm the phasers, the whole starship lurches from one spine tickling episode to another. And the crew knows how to keep it going. If the level of drama drops below a certain threshold, someone jumps in to amp it up. Dad gets drunk, mom gets sick, Janie shows up for church with an Raiders tattoo. It's more fun than a movie, and it works. Nobody gets a damn thing done. Sometimes I think of resistance as a sort of evil twin to Santa Claus who makes his rounds house to house, making sure that everything's taken care of. When he comes to a house that's hooked on self dramatization, his ruddy cheeks glow, and he giddy ups away behind his 8 tiny reindeer. He knows there will be no work done in that house. Lot of metaphor. Resistance and self medication. Do you regularly ingest any substance, controlled or otherwise, whose aim is to whose aim is the alleviation of depression, anxiety, etc.? I offer the following experience. I once worked as a writer for a big New York ad agency. Our boss used to tell us, invent a disease. Come up with a disease, he said, and we can sell the cure. Attention deficit disorder, seasonal affect disorder, social anxiety disorder. These aren't diseases, they are marketing ploys. Doctors didn't discover them, copywriters did. Marketing departments did. Drug companies did. Hmm. Depression and anxiety may be real, but they can also be resistance. When we drug ourselves to blot out our soul's call, we're being good Americans and exemplary consumers. We're doing exactly what TV commercials and pop materialist culture have been brainwashing us to do from birth. Instead of applying self knowledge, self discipline, delayed gratification, and hard work, we simply consume a product. Many pedestrians have been maimed or killed at the intersection of resistance and commerce. Hmm. At the intersection of resistance and commerce. Resistance and victimhood. I feel like some sentences I totally missed the first time I read. Resistance and victimhood. Doctors estimate that 70 to 80% of the business is non health related. People aren't sick, they are self dramatizing. Sometimes the hardest part of a medical job is keeping a straight face, as Jerry Seinfeld observed for his 20 years of dating. That's a lot of acting fascinated. That's a lot of acting fascinated. The acquisition of a condition. The acquisition of a condition lends significance to one's existence. An illness. As Jerry Seinfeld observed of his 20 years of dating, that's a lot of acting fascinated. The acquisition of a condition lends significance to one's existence. an illness, a cross to bear. Some people go from condition to condition, they cure one, and another pops up to take its place. The condition becomes a work of art in itself, a shadow version of the real creative act the victim is avoiding by spending so much care cultivating his condition. A victim act is a form of passive aggression. It seeks to achieve gratification not by honest work or a contribution made out of one's experience or insight or love, but by the manipulation of others through silent and not so silent threat. The victim compels others to come to his rescue or to behave as he wishes by holding them hostage to the prospect of his own further illness, meltdown, mental dissolution, or simply by threatening to make their lives so miserable that they do what he wants. Casting yourself as a victim is the antithesis of doing your work. Don't do it. If you're doing it, stop. Resistance and the choice of a mate. Sometimes, if we are not conscious of our own resistance, we'll pick as a mate someone who has or is successfully overcoming resistance. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's easier to endow our partner with a habit that we in fact possess but are afraid to act upon. Maybe it's less threatening to believe that our beloved spouse is worthy to live out his or her unlived life while we are not. Or maybe we are hoping to use our mate as a model. Maybe we believe or wish we could that some of our spouse's power will rub off on us if we just hang around it long enough. This is how resistance disfigures love. The stew it creates is rich, it's powerful. Tennessee Williams could work it up into a trilogy. But is it for love? If we are the supporting partner, shouldn't we face our own failure to pursue our unlived life rather than hitchhike on our spouse's coattails? And if we are the supported partner, shouldn't we step out from the glow of our loved one's adoration and instead encourage him to let his own light shine? Resistance and his book and this book. When I began this book, resistance almost beat me. This is the form it took. It told me, the voice in my head, that I was a writer of fiction, not non-fiction, and that I shouldn't be exposing these concepts of resistance literally and overtly. Rather, I should incorporate them metaphorically into a novel. That's a pretty damn subtle and convincing argument. The rationalization resistance presented me with was that I should write, say, a war piece in which the principles of resistance were expressed as the fear a warrior feels. Resistance also told me I shouldn't seek to instruct or put myself forward as a purveyor of wisdom, that this was vain, egotistical, possibly even corrupt, and that it would work harm to me in the end. That scared me. It made a lot of sense. What finally convinced me to go ahead was simply that I was so unhappy not going ahead. I was developing symptoms. As soon as I sat down and began, I was okay. Unhappiness. What does resistance feel like? First, unhappiness. We feel like hell. A low grade misery pervades everything. We are bored. We are restless. We can get no satisfaction. There's guilt, but we can't put our finger on the source. We want to go back to bed. We want to get up and party. We feel unloved and unlovable. We are disgusted. We hate our lives. We hate ourselves. Unalleviated. Resistance mounts to a pitch that becomes unendurable. At this point, vices kick in: dope, adultery, web surfing. Beyond that, resistance becomes clinical: depression, aggression, dysfunction, then actual crime and physical destruction. Sounds like life. I know. It isn't. It's resistance. What makes it tricky is that we live in a consumer culture that's acutely aware of this unhappiness and has masked all its profit seeking artillery to exploit it by selling us a product, a drug, a distraction. By selling us a product, a drug, a distraction. John Lennon once. Whoa, whoa, whoa. John Lennon once wrote, "Well, you think you are so clever and classless and free, but you are all fucking peasants, as far as I can see." Bruh, bro just abused people. Bro just abused everyone but in a very poetic way. Okay. Well, you think you are so clever and classless and free, but you're all fucking peasants, as far as I can see. As artists and professionals, it is our obligation to enact our own internal revolution, a private insurrection inside our own skulls. In this uprising, we free ourselves from the tyranny of consumer culture. We overthrow the programming of advertising, movies, video games, magazines, TV, and MTV, by which we have been hypnotized from the cradle. We unplug ourselves from the grid by recognizing that we will never cure our restlessness by contributing our disposable income to the bottom line of bullshit Inc., but only by doing our work. That's so interesting. When you think about it on the meta sense, when he says bullshit Inc., for some people that's their work. That got them out of resistance. But basically what he's talking about, if we think on a global level, if everybody becomes an artist, who will consume? Maybe we get to a point where everybody is an artist, everybody is a creator, and every creator is taking inspiration from other creators, mixing and matching, remixing, and then creating their own thing. Today we live in this world where there are 1% creators and 99% consumers. But what something like this, something like what Nawal says, is that everybody will become a creator and everybody will also be a consumer. And then there will be a simple cycle that, hey, you consume, you consume, you consume, and then you create. And then once you are done, you again need inspiration. So then you again consume, 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 and then you create. Resistance and fundamentalism. The artist and the fundamentalist both confront the same issue, the mystery of their existence as individuals. Each asks the same question: who am I? Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? At more primitive stages of evolution, humanity didn't have to deal with such questions. In the states of savagery, of barbarism, in nomadic culture, medieval society, in the tribe and the clan, one's position was fixed by the commandments of the community. It was only with the advent of modernity, starting with the ancient Greeks, with the birth of freedom and of the individual, that such matters ascended to the fore. These are not easy questions. Who am I? Why am I here? They're not easy because the human being isn't wired to function as an individual. We are wired tribally, to act as part of a group. Our psyches are programmed by millions of years of hunter-gatherer evolution. We know what the clan is. We know how to fit into the band and the tribe. What we don't know is how to be alone. We don't know how to be free individuals. The artist and the fundamentalist arise from societies at differing stages of development. The artist is the advanced model. His culture possesses affluence, stability, enough access of resource to permit the luxury of self-examination. The artist is grounded in freedom. Grounded in freedom. He's not afraid of it. He's lucky. He was born in the right place. He's a core of self-confidence, of hope for the future. He believes in progress and evolution. His faith is that humankind is advancing, however haltingly and imperfectly, toward a better world. The fundamentalist entertains no such notion. In his view, humanity has fallen from a higher state. The truth is not out there awaiting revelation. It has already been revealed. The word of God has been spoken and recorded by his prophet, be he Jesus, Muhammad, or Karl Marx. We're talking about Satan, evil one over here. Fundamentalism is the philosophy of the powerless, the conquered. the displaced and the dispossessed, its spawning ground in the wreckage of political and military defeat. Okay, we'll skip this chapter. Fundamentalism and art are mutually exclusive. Let's see. What exactly is this despair? It is the despair of freedom, the dislocation and emasculation experienced by the individual cut free from the familiar and comforting structures of the tribe and the clan and the village and the family. It is the state of modern life. The fundamentalist, or more accurately, the individual who comes to embrace fundamentalism, cannot stand freedom. He cannot find his way into the future, so he retreats to the past. He returns in imagination to the glory days of his race and seeks to reconstitute both them and himself in the purer, more virtuous light. He gets back to the basics, to the fundamentals. There is no such thing as fundamentalist art. This does not mean that the fundamentalist is not creative, rather, his creativity is inverted. He creates destruction. Even the structures he builds, his schools and networks of organizations, are dedicated to annihilation of his enemies and of himself. But the fundamentalist reserves his greatest creativity for the fashioning of. Okay, we'll skip this chapter or skip this paragraph, let's see. To combat the call of sin, that is a resistance, the fundamentalist plunges either into action or into the study of sacred text. He loses himself in these, much as the artist does in the process of creation. Difference is that while the one looks forward, hoping to create a better world, the other looks backward, seeking to return to a purer world from which he and all have fallen. The humanist believes that humankind as individuals is called upon to co-create the world with God. This is why he values human life so highly. In his view, things do progress, life does evolve, each individual has value, at least potentially. In advancing, at least potentially, in advancing this cause, the fundamentalist cannot conceive of this. In his society, dissent is not just crime but apostasy. It is heresy, transgression against God Himself. When fundamentalism wins, the world enters a dark age. Yet still, I can condemn one who is drawn to this philosophy. I consider my own inner journey, the advantages I have had of education, affluence, family support, health, and the blind good luck to be born an American. And still, I have learned to exist as an autonomous individual, if indeed I have only by a whisker, and at a cost I would hate to have to reckon up. It may be that the human race is not ready for freedom. The air of liberty may be too rarefied for us to breathe. Certainly, I wouldn't be writing this book on this subject if living with freedom were easy. The paradox seems to be, as Socrates demonstrated long ago, that the truly free individual is free only to the extent of his own self-mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. Wow. The paradox seems to be, as Socrates demonstrated long ago, that the truly free individual is free only to the extent of his own self-mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. Resistance and criticism. If you find yourself criticizing other people, you are probably doing it out of resistance. When we see others beginning to live their authentic selves, it drives us crazy if we have not lived out our own. Individuals who are realized in their own lives almost never criticize others. If they speak at all, it is to offer encouragement. Watch yourself. Of all the manifestations of resistance, most only harm ourselves. Criticism and cruelty harm others as well. Watch yourself. All of the manifestations of resistance mostly only harm ourselves. Criticism and cruelty harm others as well. Resistance and self doubt. Self doubt can be an ally. By the way, this quote was crazy, Socrates. Crazy quote. The paradox seems to be, as Socrates demonstrated long ago, that the truly free individual is free only to the extent of his own self mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. Who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. Self doubt can be an ally. This is because it serves as an indicator of aspiration. It reflects love of something we dream of doing, and desire to do it. If you find yourself asking yourself and your friends, am I really a writer? Am I really an artist? Chances are you are. The counterfeit innovator. Yeah, this is good. The counterfeit innovator is widely self-confident. The real one is scared to death. Resistance and fear. Are you paralyzed with fear? That's a good sign. Fear is good. This reminds me of something. Okay. Fear is good. Like self doubt, fear is an indicator. Fear tells us what we have to do. Remember a rule of thumb: the more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. Resistance is experienced as fear. The degree of fear equates to the strength of resistance. Therefore, the more fear we feel about a specific enterprise, the more certain we can be that that enterprise is important to us and to the growth of our soul. That's why we feel so much resistance. If it meant nothing to us, there would be no resistance. Have you ever watched Inside the Actor's Studio? The host, James Lipton, invariably asks his guest, what factors make you decide to take a particular role? The actor always answers, because I'm afraid of it. The professional tackles the projects that will make him stretch. He takes on the assignment that will bear him into uncharted waters, compel him to explore unconscious parts of himself. Is he scared? Hell yes. He's petrified. Conversely, the professional turns down roles that he's done before. He's not afraid of them anymore. Why waste his time? The professional turns down roles that he's done before. He's not afraid of them anymore. Why waste his time? So if you're paralyzed with fear, it's a good sign. It shows you what you have to do. It shows you what you have to do. Resistance and love. Resistance is directly proportional to love. If you are feeling massive resistance, the good news is it means there's tremendous love there too. If you don't love the project that is terrifying you, you wouldn't feel anything. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. The more resistance you experience, the more important your unmanifested art project enterprise is to you, and the more gratification you will feel when you finally do it. Resistance in being a star. Grandiose fantasies are a symptom of resistance. They're the sign of an amateur. The professional has learned that success, like happiness, comes as a byproduct of work. The professional concentrates on the work and allows rewards to come or not come, whatever they like. Grandiose fantasies are a symptom of resistance. They're a sign of an amateur. The professional has learned that success, like happiness, comes as a byproduct of work. The professional concentrates on the work and allows rewards to come or not come, whatever they like. Resistance and isolation. Sometimes we balk at embarking on an enterprise because we are afraid of being alone. We feel comfortable with the tribe around us. It makes us nervous going off into the woods on our own. Here's the trick: we're never alone. As soon as we step outside the campfire glow, our muse lights on our shoulder like a butterfly. The act of courage falls forth infallibly, that deeper part of ourselves that supports and sustains us. Have you seen interviews with the young John Lennon or Bob Dylan? When the reporter tries to ask about their personal selves, the boys deflect these queries with withering sarcasm. Why? Because Lennon and Dylan know that the part of them that writes the songs is not them, not the personal self that is of such surpassing fascination to their bone-headed interrogators. Lennon and Dylan also know that the part of themselves that does the writing is too sacred, too precious, too fragile to be redacted into sound bites for the titillation of would be idolaters who are themselves caught up in their own resistance, so they put them on and blow them off. It's a commonplace among artists and children at play that they are not aware of time or solitude while they're chasing their vision. The hours fly. The sculptress and the tree climbing tyke both look up blinking when mom calls. Supper time. The sculptress and the tree climbing tyke both look up blinking when mom calls. Supper time, supper time. Resistance and isolation. Friends sometimes ask, don't you get lonely sitting by yourself all day? At first it seemed odd, but this is actually so cool. This is cool because it brings a lot of memories. It's a commonplace among artists and children at play that they are not aware of time or solitude while they're chasing their vision. The hours fly. The sculptress and the tree climbing tyke both look up blinking when mom calls. Supper time. Friends sometimes ask, don't you get lonely sitting by yourself all day? At first, it seemed odd to hear myself answer no. Then I realized that I was not alone. I was in the book. I was with the characters. I was with myself. Not only do I not feel alone with my characters, they are more vivid and interesting to me than the people in my real life. If you think about it, the case can be otherwise. In order for a book or any project or enterprise to hold our attention, for the length of time it takes to unfold itself, it has to plug into some internal perplexity or passion that is of paramount importance to us. That problem becomes the theme of our work, even if we can, at the start, understand or articulate it. As the characters arise, each embodies infallibly an aspect of the dilemma, that perplexity. These characters might not be interesting to anyone else, but they are absolutely fascinating to us. They are us. Meaner, smarter, sexier versions of ourselves. It's fun to be with them because they are wrestling with the same issue that has its hooks into us. They are our soulmates, our lovers, our best friends, even the villains, especially the villains. Even in a book like this, which has no characters, I don't feel alone because I'm imagining the reader, whom I conjure as an aspiring artist, much like my own younger, less grizzled self, to whom I hope to impart a little starch and inspiration and prime a little with some hard knocks wisdom and a few tricks of the trade. Whom I conjure as an aspiring artist, much like my own younger, less grizzled self, to whom I hope to impart a little starch and inspiration and prime a little with some hard knocks wisdom and a few tricks of the trade. The thing that the thing that stuck with me the most with this book is just the fact that it talks about all the addictions and how if you overcome resistance, there would be no need of all these addictions. And that really stuck with me. Yeah, that's the number one that stuck with me. So I keep coming back over here. Like, you don't need, I don't need these addictions. I need work. And even if that's not true, it's like, oh, I think Derek Sivers has this book. It's called, I forgot what it's called, but it's like, even if it's not true, it's good to believe that because it's helpful for me. Beliefs that are not true but useful. Yeah, yeah. Beliefs that are not true but useful. So yeah, sometimes you just have to believe in things that it's okay if it's false, but they're really useful for your well-being. Resistance and healing. Have you ever spent time in Santa Fe? There's a subculture of healing there. The idea is that there's something therapeutic in the atmosphere, a safe place to go and get yourself together. There are other places, Santa Barbara and Ojai, California, come to mind, usually populated by upper middle class people with more time and money than they know what to do with it, in which a culture of healing also obtains. The concept in all these environments seems to be that one needs to complete his healing before he is ready to do his work. This way of thinking, are you ahead of me, is a form of resistance. What are we trying to heal anyway? The athlete knows the day will never come when he wakes up pain free. He has to play hurt. Remember, the part of us that we imagine needs healing is not the part we create from. That part is far deeper and stronger. The part we create from can be touched by anything our parents did or society did. That part is unsullied, uncorrupted, soundproof, waterproof, and bulletproof. The part of us that we imagine needs healing is not the part we create from. That part is far deeper and stronger. The part we create from can be touched by anything our parents did or society did. That part is unsullied, uncorrupted, soundproof, waterproof, and bulletproof. In fact, the more troubles we have got, the better and richer that part becomes. The part that needs healing is our personal life. Personal life has nothing to do with work. Besides, what better way of healing than to find our center of self sovereignty? Isn't that the whole point of healing? I washed up in New York a couple of decades ago, making $20 a night driving a cab and running away full time from doing my work. One night alone in $110 a month sublet, I hit bottom in terms of having diverted myself into so many phony channels so many times that I couldn't rationalize it for one more evening. I dragged out my ancient Smith Corona, dreading the experiences pointless, fruitless, meaningless, not to say the most painful exercise I could think of. For 2 hours I made myself sit there, torturing out some trash that I chugged immediately into the shit can. That was enough. I put the machine away. I went back to the kitchen. In the sink sat 10 days of dishes. For some reason I had enough excess energy and I decided to wash them. The warm water felt pretty good. The soap and sponge were doing their thing. A pile of clean plates began rising in the drying rack. To my amazement, I realized I was whistling. It hit me that I had turned a corner. I was okay. I would be okay from here on, do you understand? I hadn't written anything good. It might be years before I would, but if I ever did at all, that didn't matter. What counted was that I had, after years of running from it, actually sat down and done my work. Don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against true healing. We all need it, but it has nothing to do with doing our work, and it can be a colossal exercise in resistance. Resistance loves healing. Resistance knows that the more psychic energy we expend dredging and re-dredging the tired, boring injustices of our personal lives, the less juice we have to do for our work. The less juice we have to do our work. Wow. This book is really good. You gotta keep coming back. Yeah, it's like I think Nawal said this pretty good. He was like, hey, instead of just looking, or whatever, I don't even remember what he said, but paraphrasing it, he said that instead of looking for newer and newer books to read, find the top 100 books that matter the most and reread them again and again. And this is definitely one of them. Resistance and support. Have you ever been to a workshop? These boondoggles are colleges of resistance. They ought to give out PhDs in resistance. What better way of avoiding work than going to a workshop? But what I hate even worse is the word support. Seeking support from friends and families like having your people gathered around at your deathbed. It's nice, but when the ship sails, all they can do is stand on the dock waving goodbye. Any support we get from persons of flesh and blood is like monopoly money. It's not legal tender in that sphere where we have to do our work. In fact, the more energy we spend stoking up on support from colleagues and loved ones, the weaker we become, and the less capable of handling our business. My friend Carol had the following dream at a time when her life felt like it was careening out of control. She was a passenger on a bus. Bruce Springsteen was driving. Suddenly, Springsteen pulled over, handed Carol the keys, and bolted. In the dream, Carol was panicking. How could she drive this huge rolling greyhound? By now, all the passengers were staring. Clearly, no one else was going to step forward and take charge. Carol took the wheel. To her amazement, she found she could handle it. Later, analyzing the dream, she figured Bruce Springsteen was the boss of her psyche. The bus was the vehicle of her life. The boss was telling Carol it was time to take the wheel. More than that, the dream, by actually setting her down to the driver's seat and letting her feel that she could control the vehicle on the road, was providing her with a simulator run to prime her with the confidence that she could actually take command in her life. A dream like that is real support. It's a check you can cash when you sit down alone to do your work. P.S. When your deeper self delivers a dream like that, you don't talk about it. Don't dilute its power. The dream is for you. It's between you and your muse. Shut up and use it. The only exception, you may share it with another comrade in arms, if sharing it will help or encourage that comrade in his or her own endeavors. Resistance and rationalization. Rationalization is resistance's right hand man. Its job is to keep us from feeling the shame we would feel if we truly faced what cowards we are for not doing our work. Don't knock rationalization. Where would we be without it? I don't know anyone who can get through the day without two or three juicy rationalization. They're more important than sex. Oh come on, nothing's more important. Oh yeah, have you ever gone a week without rationalization? But rationalization has its own sidekick. It's the part of our psyche that actually believes that what rationalization tells us. It's one thing to lie to ourselves, it's another thing to believe it. Rationalization part 2. Resistance is fear, but resistance is too cunning to show itself naked in its form. Why? Because the resistance lets us see clearly that our own fear is preventing from doing our work. We may feel shame at this, and shame may drive us to act in the face of fear. Resistance doesn't want us to do this, so it brings in rationalization. Rationalization is resistance's spin doctor. It's resistance's way of hiding the big stick behind its back. Instead of showing us our fear, which might shame us and impel us to do our work, resistance presents us with a series of plausible, rational justifications for why we shouldn't do our work. What's particularly insidious about the rationalizations that resistance presents to us is that a lot of them are true. They're legitimate. Our wife may really be in her 8th month of pregnancy. She may, in truth, need us at home. Our department may really be instituting a changeover that will eat up hours of our time. Indeed, it may make sense to put off finishing our dissertation, at least till after the baby is born. What resistance leaves out, of course, is that all this means diddly. Tolstoy had 13 kids and wrote War and Peace. Lance Armstrong had cancer and won the Tour de France, 3 years and counting. It's pretty good. I think Steven Pressfield should. I actually don't know. He might have mentioned somewhere. Maybe through in the first forward he has kind of laid out, but he should kind of dig into, not dig into, but he should kind of specifically write about this, that hey, overcoming resistance doesn't mean grinding for 12 hours. That means just doing the most important thing. And for him, he would do the most important thing and he would go all out for 4 hours, and then he was done. And then he would do it again the next day. I think he should like talk about that. I don't know if he has already mentioned that. Forward. I should also read the forward. But yeah, right here, around 10:30. What's the time? What's the time? It's about 10:30 now. I sit down and plunge in. When I start making typos, I know I'm getting tired. That's 4 hours or so. I've hit the point of diminishing returns. I wrap for the day, copy whatever I've done to the disk, and stash it. Stash the disk in the glove compartment of my truck in case there's fire and I have to run for it. I power down. It's 3:30. The office is closed. Resistance can be beaten. If resistance couldn't be beaten, there would be no Fifth Symphony, no Romeo and Juliet, no Golden Gate Bridge. Defeating resistance is like giving birth. It seems absolutely impossible until you remember that women have been pulling it off successfully with support and without for 50 million years. Book 2, Combating Resistance. It is one thing to study war and another to live the warrior's life. And now we talk about turning pro. Professionals and amateurs. Aspiring artists defeated by resistance share one trait. They all think like amateurs. They have not yet turned pro. The moment an artist turns pro is an epochal, as the birth of his first child. With one stroke, everything changes. I can state absolutely that the term of my life can be divided into two parts: before turning pro and after. To be clear, when I say professional, I don't mean doctors and lawyers, those of the professions. I mean the professional as an ideal, the professional in contrast to the amateur. Consider the differences. The amateur plays for fun, the professional plays for keeps. To the amateur, the game is his avocation. To the pro, it's his vocation. The amateur plays part time, the professional plays full time. The amateur is a weekend warrior, the professional is there 7 days a week. The word amateur comes from the Latin root meaning to love. The conventional interpretation is that the amateur pursues his calling out of love, while the pro does it for money. Not the way I see it. In my view, the amateur does not love the game enough. If he did, he would not pursue it as a sideline, distinct from his real vocation. The professional loves it so much he dedicates his life to it. He commits full time. That's what I mean when I say turning pro. Resistance hates when we turn pro. A professional. Someone once asked Somerset if he wrote on a schedule or only when struck by inspiration. I write only when inspiration strikes. He replied, "Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp. That's a pro." In terms of resistance, Morgan was saying, "I despise resistance. I will not let it faze me. I will sit down and do my work." Morgan reckoned another deeper truth, that by performing the mundane physical act of sitting down and starting to work, he set in motion a mysterious but infallible sequence of events that would produce inspiration as surely as if the goddess had synchronized her watch with his. He knew if he built it, she would come. What a writer's day feel like. I wake up with a gnawing sensation of dissatisfaction. Already I feel fear. Already the loved ones around me are starting to fade. I interact, I imprison, but I'm not. I'm not thinking about the work. Consigned that I've already consigned that to the muse. What I'm aware of is resistance. I feel it in my guts. I can afford it the utmost respect because I know it can defeat me. on any given day as easily as the need for a drink can overcome an alcoholic. I go through the chores, the correspondence, the obligations of daily life. Again, I'm there, but not really. The clock is running in my head. I know I can indulge in daily crap for a little while, but I must cut it off when the bell rings. I'm keenly aware of the principles of priority, which states you must know the difference between what is urgent and what is important, and you must do what's important first. What's important is the work. That's the game I have to suit up for. That's the field on which I have to leave everything I've got. Do I really believe that my work is crucial to the planet's survival? Of course not. But it's but it's as important to me as catching that mouse is to the hawk circling outside my window. He's hungry. He needs a kill, so do I. I'm done with my chores now. It's time. I say my prayer and head out on the hunt. The sun isn't up yet. It's cold. The fields are sopping. Brambles scratch my ankles. Branches snap back in my face. The hill is a sonofab bitch. But what can you do? Set one foot in front of another and keep climbing. An hour passes. I'm warmer now. The pace has got my blood going. The years have taught me one skill: how to be miserable. I know how to shut up and keep humping. This is a great asset because it's human, the proper role for a mortal. It does not offend the gods but elicit their intercession. My bitching self is receding now. The instincts are taking over. Another hour passes. I turn the corner of a thicket, and there he is. The nice, fat hair I knew would show up if I just keep plugging. Home from the hill, I thank the mortals and offer up their portion of the kill. They brought it to me. They deserve the share. I'm grateful. I joke with my kids beside the fire. They're happy. The old man has brought home the bacon. The old lady's happy. She's cooking it up. I'm happy. I've earned my keep on the planet, at least for this day. Resistance is not a factor now. I don't think of the hunt and I don't think of the office. The tension drains from my neck and back. What I feel and say and do this night will not be coming from any disowned or unresolved part of me, any part corrupted by resistance. I go to sleep content, but my final thought is of resistance. I'll wake up with it tomorrow. Already, I'm stealing myself. This chapter was good. How to be miserable. In my younger days, dodging the draft, I somehow wound up in the Marine Corps. There's a myth about Marine training turns baby-faced recruits into bloodthirsty killers. Trust me, the Marine Corps is not that efficient. What it does teach, however, is a lot more useful. The Marine Corps teaches you how to be miserable. This is invaluable for an artist. Marines love to be miserable. Marines derive a perverse satisfaction in having colder chow drive a perverse satisfaction in having colder chow, crappier equipment, and higher casualty rates than any outfit of dog faces, swab jockeys, or fly boys, all of whom they despise. Why? Because these candy asses don't know how to be miserable. The artist committing himself to his calling has volunteered for hell, whether he knows it or not. He will be dining for the duration on a diet of isolation, rejection, self doubt, despair, ridicule, contempt, and humiliation. The artist must be like that Marine. He has to know how to be miserable. He has to love being miserable. He has to take pride in being more miserable than any soldier or swabby or jet jockey. Because this is war, baby. And war is hell. We're all pros already. All of us are pros in one area, our jobs. We get a paycheck, we work for money, we are professionals. Now, are there principles we can take from what we are already successful doing in our workday life and apply to our artistic aspirations? What exactly are the qualities that define us as professionals? We show up every day. We might do it only because we have to keep from getting fired, but we do it. We show up every day. We show up no matter what. In sickness and in health, come hell or high water, we stagger into the factory. We might do it only so as not to let down our co-workers or for other less noble reasons, but we do it. We show up no matter what. We stay on the job all day. Our minds may wander, but our bodies remain at the wheel. We pick up the phone when it rings. We assist the customer when he seeks our help. We don't go home till the whistle blows. Till the whistle blows. We are committed over the long haul. Next year we may go to another job, another company, another country, but will still be working until we hit the lottery. We are part of the labor force. The stakes for us are high and real. This is about survival, feeding our families, educating our children. It's about eating. We accept remuneration for our labor. We are not here for fun. We work for money. We do not over identify with our jobs. Hmm. We're not here for fun. We work for money. We don't over identify with our jobs. We may take pride in our work. We may stay late and come in on weekends. But we recognize that we are not our job descriptions. The amateur, on the other hand, over identifies with his avocation, his artistic aspiration. He defines himself by it. He's a musician, a painter, a playwright. Resistance loves this. Resistance knows that the amateur composer will never write a symphony because he's overly invested in its success and over terrified of its failure. The amateur takes it so seriously and paralyzes him. We master the technique of our jobs. We have a sense of humor about our jobs. We receive praise or blame in the real world. Now consider the amateur, the aspiring painter, the wannabe playwright. How does he pursue his calling? 1. He doesn't show up every day. 2. He doesn't show up no matter what. 3. He doesn't stay on the job all day. He's not committed over the long haul. The stakes for him are illusory and fake. He does not get money and he over identifies with his art. He does not have a sense of humor about failure. You don't hear him bitching, "This fucking trilogy is killing me." Instead, he doesn't write his trilogy at all. The amateur has not mastered the technique of his art, nor does he expose himself to judgment in the real world. If we show a poem to a friend says it's wonderful, I love it, that's not a real world feedback. That's a friend being nice to us. Nothing is as empowering as real world validation, even if it's for failure. The first professional writing job I ever had after 17 years of trying was in a movie called King Kong Lives. I and my partner at the time, Ron Shusett, a brilliant writer and producer, who also did Alien and Total Recall, hammered out the screenplay for Dino De Laurentiis. We loved it. We were sure we had a hit even after we had seen the finished film. We were certain it was a blockbuster. We invited everyone we knew to the premiere, even rented out the joint next door for a post-triumph blowout. Get there early. We warned our friends the place will be mobbed. Nobody showed. It's actually really cool how the entire setup builds until the end of the page and the climax is on the next page. So it's not revealed. You have to turn the page and then it's revealed. Nobody showed. There was only one guy in line beside our guest and he was muttering something about spare change. In the theater, our friends endured the movie in mute stupefaction. When the lights came up, they fled like cockroaches into the night. Next year came the review in Variety. Ronald Shusett and Stephen Pressfield. We hope these are not their real names for the parents' sake. When the first week's grosses came in, the flick barely registered. Still, I clung to hope. Maybe it's only tanking in urban areas. Maybe it's playing better in the burbs. I motored to an Ed City multiplex. A youth manned the popcorn booth. "How's King Kong Lives?" I asked. He flashed, thumbs down. "Miss it, man. It sucks." I was crushed. Here I was, 42 years old, divorced, childless, having given up all normal human pursuits to chase the dream of being a writer. Now I've finally got my name on a big time Hollywood production starring Linda Hamilton. And what happens? I'm a loser, a phony. My life is worthless. and so am I. My friend Tony snapped me out of it by asking if I was gonna quit. Hell no. Then be happy. You are where you wanted to be, aren't you? So you are taking a few blows. That's the price of being in the arena and not on the sidelines. Stop complaining. Be grateful. That was when I realized I had become a pro. I had not yet had a success, but I had had a real failure. Okay.